This video is brought to you by BetUS Sportsbook and Casino.
After a couple of trades, who is going to make the final Seattle Seahawks 53-man roster? What's going on, everybody? Good morning. It is Seahawks game day. We are less than 12 hours away, about 10 hours away from kickoff here in Seattle. Preseason game number 3, the final preseason game, also doubles as the home opener. I think we're excited to see what goes down in a game where you play a lot of your starters. We're going to get to see a lot of the key guys on the team. We're also going to get to see plenty of guys at the back of the roster competing for those final few open roster spots. So I'm ready to go. You guys are mostly ready to go, I think. We're all ready to see this preseason close out the right way. And hopefully, we can go into the regular season with some momentum. But before we get to the events of tonight, I thought it would be a good time to talk a little bit about this depth chart, talk a little bit about this roster, because the Seahawks have made some trades recently that have changed the expected balance of this roster. Some of the guys that we may have thought would have made this team are now on other teams, and there's at least one player that we didn't think was going to be here who is now likely to make this roster. And when you combine that with some of the other happenings recently, you have some changes. You have some clear and definitive changes in the Seattle Seahawks roster, and I think it's worth going over, as well as going over some of the potential branching paths that this roster could take. So in this video, we're going to take a look at the depth chart. I have a projected 53-man roster here on screen, and I also have the 16-man projected practice squad. We're going to go over it in this video. Before we do that, however, I want to tell you guys about my friends over at BetUS who are sponsoring this particular video, and you can go over there right now and get some really nice odds on the Seattle Seahawks to make the playoffs. So if you're looking at what's on screen right now, you're seeing the plus 175 on Seattle Seahawks to make the playoffs. Just to make the playoffs, plus 175. If that's something that motivates you, get on over to BetUS through the link in the description and throw down a wager on it. They boast the fastest payouts in the industry. There's a 125% sign-up bonus up to $2,000 on your first 3 deposits, 200% crypto deposit bonus, and a fast and easy deposit and withdrawal process. Check out BetUS through the link in the description. Consider betting on something like this and get to some sports gambling this season. All right, so let's take a look at the potential depth chart here. Before we get into this, though, I hope you like this video. If you do, please click the thumbs up button down below. Helps out the channel. Subscribe to the channel if you're new and you want daily Seahawks content. Click the bell for notifications every time a video gets posted. Become a channel member for $2 a month. Those are the best ways to help out the channel. All right, so let's start at the top here. Quarterback, I got Geno Smith and Sam Howell. I don't think there's anything to discuss here. I still have PJ Walker as the practice squad quarterback. It wouldn't shock me if we go out there and try to get somebody a little bit more competent, but I don't know who that could be. So for now, I'm just going to leave PJ Walker here until we sign somebody else and let Walker go. So at the end of the day, if he was a better quarterback than PJ Walker, is unlikely to fall through to a practice squad. He's going to be on a team, right? So wouldn't shock me if we end up going with Walker. Running back, again, this is pretty easy, I think. Walker, Charbonnet, McIntosh, Halani. I don't see any other way this can break. And then you've got Kobe Lewis as your practice squad running back. He's clearly been the guy that we've been wanting to see stuff out of this preseason after the top 4 guys. So Kobe Lewis, practice squatter, I think, all day. A wide receiver, again, I separated it out into 3 columns. So we go Metcalf, Lockett, JSN as your top 3. Bobo and Chenault as the next 2. Those 5 guys are locked in. I don't think there's anything we can do there. Chenault's contract is mostly guaranteed, so I don't think there's anything to discuss there. The only discussion is Derek Young here at the very bottom. Derek Young, I still think he's the guy, but I wouldn't rule out a guy like Aesop Winston Jr. or maybe even Cody White making it instead of him. It just depends on how we view their special teams value. I think Derek Young is the guy who has the most special teams value, but ultimately that's going to be a call that the team makes. And if they end up seeing a little bit more with a guy like Winston or White, then it wouldn't shock me if things flip and we try to get Derek Young on the practice squad. I don't know if he'll make it, but I mean, Mike Macdonald went out of his way to compliment Derek Young for his value on special teams not that long ago. So I still think Derek Young's the guy as number 6 receiver. Offensive line, the starters I still have as the same: Cross, Tomlinson, Connor Williams, Bradford, and Lucas. Now, Lucas is obviously hanging in a little bit of a limbo where we don't even know if he's going to start the season on the active roster or injured reserve. If he is on the injured reserve, remember, he can come off very quickly. So at this point, it would not shock anybody for Lucas to start the season on the IR and miss a few games at least. So I'll talk about the possible effects of that before we finish this video. And then backing him up, I've still got Forsyth at the backup left tackle spot. He can play both tackle spots. Same with George Fant, by the way, who's the backup right tackle. He can play both sides. You got Christian Haynes backing up Tomlinson. We now very clearly feel fairly comfortable playing Haynes at left guard. It would not amaze me if Haynes takes Tomlinson's starting spot, and Tomlinson might even get let go at that point. So there are some interesting things that can still happen here. Backup center is, of course, Olu, and I can't imagine that changing. And backup right guard is going to be Sataoa Lomia. He settles back in at his more natural right guard spot because Haynes is clearly the guy that we like on the left side, if anybody. And then, like I said, George Fant is your backup right tackle. Now, a couple different ways this could go with Abe Lucas. If Abe Lucas starts the season on the active roster, then cool. But if not, if he has to start the season on IR, and as of right now he's not practicing, I think the guy who gets bumped up would be, well, it would be Gerald. I think Michael Gerald, you could make a good argument. You could make an argument that Gerald needs to be on the 53-man roster anyway, and maybe a guy like Forsyth gets bumped out for him. But if Bradford starts the season on, Lucas starts the season on IR, then I think that makes it easy where you can just say, okay, Gerald's now the backup to George Fant, and we don't have to worry about Gerald getting poached because he has played pretty decently in the preseason, and he's a very talented guy. He may not be able to make it to the practice squad ultimately. So if things conspire so Gerald can make the active roster to start the season, then obviously that's cool. But I think that's how it would go. I know some people are high on McClendon Curtis making the 53-man. I just don't see enough there. Like, he's clearly an interior offensive lineman. He's not a tackle. So who are you clearing out to keep McClendon Curtis? It's certainly not Haynes. It's not Oluwatimi, and I don't think it's Lomia either. I think the only way you keep Curtis would be if Haynes gets to start at left guard and Tomlinson gets cut because he's a veteran who doesn't need to be sitting on the bench. Then Curtis bumps up to the backup left guard spot maybe, but short of that, I don't think you can make a very good argument for Curtis sticking on this roster. So that's how I see things offensively right now. Tight end would be Noah Fant, Pharaoh Brown, AJ Barner. It's conceivable that a guy like Pharaoh Brown starts the season on IR, but at this point I doubt it. So we're going to go ahead and leave him on the active roster. Brady Russell and Jack Westover both make the practice squad. I think we want to keep both guys. Russell because he's playing pretty well this preseason camp. Westover because of his familiarity with Grubb's offense. We might see him as a player that we use in the future. And it should be fairly easy to keep him because he was a UDFA. I don't know about Russell, though, admittedly. Okay, so that's your offense. Let's jump on over to the defense now, where things have shaken up a little bit because of some trades and also an injury update. So defensive line-wise, I go Leonard Williams, Jaron Reed, Byron Murphy, Draymond Jones. Still, I list him as a defensive lineman, even though I know he's going to play a lot of edge this year. I think he's going to do both. Jonathan Hankins and Mike Morris. So that's 6 guys, which is a little bit dicey, especially if Draymond's going to do a lot of stuff on the edge this year. But you take a look at this, and you consider the fact that you're going to have a guy like Miles Adams on the practice squad who can be called up a couple times to supplement things early in the season. I think it will work. I think you can get it done here. You just need to be able to feel comfortable using all 6 of your guys, and I think we will be. It's not going to be like last year where we had a couple guys on the roster who we clearly didn't want to play more than a couple snaps a game. Now, the big change here would be Cam Young. We have not heard anything about Cam Young since he got hurt like a month plus ago, or it feels like a month plus ago. So for the moment, I'm listing him on the injured part of this roster. I do think he starts the season on IR at this point, and him being put on IR will enable us to do a couple of things down roster, but I think we're going to try to get by with the 6 defense down linemen, the defensive linemen. When you take a look at some of the things the Seahawks are doing so far in the preseason, like having one down lineman on some passing downs, like one guy with his hand in the dirt and everyone else is just a rusher, I think it's doable. I think you have enough flexibility to get away with it. So I think it's going to be these 6 guys on the defensive line, Adams on the practice squad. You can call him up a couple times, and we'll be waiting for Cam Young to get back. And when Cam Young gets back, he's kind of your 7th guy, and you make a cut somewhere else to make room for him. All right, OLB or edge rusher or defensive end, however you want to put it in this defense. I go Uchenna Nwosu, I go Boye Mafe, Derek Hall, and then Darrell Taylor's been traded. I didn't think he was going to make the roster anyway, but now he's definitely not making the roster because he's been traded. So I do have Mr. Cesar over here on the other side as the backup to Mafe. I think you can get away with having a UDFA rookie like Nelson Cesar on your 53-man roster as the 4th end because of Draymond Jones. And also, quite possibly, you get a little bit of edge work from a guy like Mike Morris even. So Nelson will be on the active roster, but he won't have to play very much at all. So I think this was going to happen even if Taylor didn't get traded, but I am going to go ahead with him on the active roster for now. It wouldn't amaze me if we just went completely naked with 3 edge rushers and then used Cesar's roster spot somewhere else. But for now, I think we want to carry that forth. And then I have Jamie Sheriff as a special practice squatter. So inside linebacker, I think this is a big change here. I think we now carry 5 guys because we have some concerns about health. We have some concerns about depth. Jerome Baker and Tyrell Dodson remain your top 2 guys. Then you go Tyrese Knight, who has had a really nice preseason overall, as your top backup. And then I go Michael Barrett, who we just traded for. And the 5th guy is Radigan. I think he's looked good enough this preseason and has enough value on special teams. It would not amaze me if we cut Radigan so we can have a 7th defensive lineman or even an 11th offensive lineman on the team, because Radigan is due over $3 million against the cap this year. But I think we need him for a couple different reasons, so we might try to rework his contract. But I don't think we're going to let him go one way or the other. And then I have Pat O'Connell as the backup inside linebacker all the way back on the practice squad. So I still give him priority over a guy like Blake Lynch. And that's your linebacker group. Cornerback, I think the Cameron Young injury opens the way for us to carry 6 cornerbacks again, but that may not hold when and if Cam Young gets back. So we got Witherspoon, Woolen, Trey Brown. I think those 3 guys are set in stone here. And then it gets tough. I now have D. Williams making the roster because he's the only guy on this team that can return punts right now that we seem comfortable with. And he can also return kickoffs on top of what he does defensively. So there's value there. And I still have Pritchett and James making the roster, the 2 rookies. I think they get on there for their potential and their youth and their ability to develop in the coming years. And then I go Carlton Johnson and Artie Burns on the practice squad. I don't know if Artie Burns would actually go on the practice squad because he's a veteran, but veterans go on the practice squad sometimes. And he would certainly be sitting there thinking, hey, I might end up on the 53-man roster sooner rather than later, depending on what some of these rookies do, depending on what D. Williams does. So I can camp here for a little bit. So obviously, when Cam Young gets back, I think DJ James is going to be on the chopping block as kind of the trickle-down effect of that. So I don't think DJ James is long for this roster. He could lose it to Artie Burns or Cam Young. But for the moment, I'm going to go ahead and put it like this and just be aware of the fact that there's some possibility for shakeups. Safety, Julian Love, Rayshon Jenkins starting, Kayvon Wallace, Kobe Bryant backing him up. And I currently have 2 safeties on the practice squad, Marquise Blair, Ty Okada, 2 guys that have made some plays so far this offseason. And I think we're going to want to keep them around because now there's a Rayshon Jenkins injury situation. We might want to, protect ourselves against that. And then special teams would be, of course, Myers, Dixon, and Stoll. So that's what I have. There are 53 guys, 16 practice squatters. and a couple of injured guys as well that will make room for down the line. Let me know what you guys think. I'll see you guys later. Go Hawks. More videos coming later today. Enjoy the game. And once again, thank you to BetUS for sponsoring the video. Check him out. Link in the description. Always gamble responsibly.